At age 7, my future father-in-law, Uriel Simon, was left alone in the house. To pass the time, he took out a copy of the Torah and began reading the book of Bereshit. He turned the pages, but at some point he burst out in tears. When he got to the story about Yosef and his brothers, he was so horrified by the cruelty among brothers, he could not prevent the tears. Maybe that was the day that his destiny was written to ultimately be a professor of Bible, and one story that he continued to contemplate throughout his life was the story about Yosef and his brothers. In fact, the entire story of Bereshit, continuous focus about relations between brothers. And there's so much violence and hate. Cain murders Hevel. There's tensions between Ishmael and Yitzchak, Yakov and Esau, Yosef and his brothers. One might conclude, better to have sisters. But Simon, many years of study, ultimately produced his masterpiece, which won the Bialik Prize, in which he gives a new perspective about the story of brothers in the book of Bereshit. Yes, indeed, intimate family connections can often be a source of competition, jealousy, and the like, leading to violence. But this family connection could also lead to the other. And much of the story of the book of Bereshit, how the natural tendencies of competition and jealousy, they can be overcome. Indeed, the story of Cain and Hevel, there's no happy ending. Hevel is murdered. But among the descendants of Abraham, we have 3 sets of stories, and each one ends with reconciliation. And as Simon points out, all 3 stories, Ishmael and Yitzchak, Yakov and Esau, Yosef and his brothers, all 3 end with a burial scene of the brothers coming together around their shared origin, their shared ancestors, in a scene of fraternity and being together. But more importantly, Simon points out that there's a progression between the stories. We find Ishmael and Yitzchak are able to come together, but by Yakov and Esau, it's more than that. As we spoke about earlier, hatred is overcome in terms even, at least at some point, to love. By Yosef and his brothers, the change is even more profound, because as Yosef and his brothers, there is not only reconciliation, but each goes through a long path of deep change. It's not external, as he shows throughout the stories how the failings of each side and how each one took responsibility and overcomes it. One small example, if Yehuda's jealousy of his father's favoritism for Yosef leads him to sell Yosef to slavery, ultimately, the knowledge that his father loves Binyamin leads Yehuda to sacrifice themselves to save Binyamin. So yes, it's natural, the problems, but there's a potential to overcome them, and this is the message of the book of Bereshit. And the next book of the Torah, Shemot, begins with an ideal brotherhood, Moshe and Aaron, 2 brothers that work together, that love each other, the brothers that many attribute the verse in the book of Tehillim, in Hebrew, Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad, how good and pleasant it is when brothers are together.